On today's episode, the intersection of fitness and financial independence. Welcome to Choose FI.
You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
Excited to dive into this week's episode. I mean, really excited. This is something that is both very personal for me and one of the things that lights me up the most. And I see these obvious parallels between my pursuit of being a healthier person, pursuing fitness and pursuing financial independence. And yet I started posting a video challenge, which we'll come back to in just a second on YouTube. And it was talking about this fitness journey. And one of the early comments I got was, you're a personal finance show. Why are you talking about fitness? And I was like, thank you for that setup. Let's talk about that. So Brad, we'll dive into it a little bit more, but your gut take, the intersection between fitness and financial independence, do you see that overlap in your own life?
Oh, I certainly do. I think this has been a real personal journey for me. I know it has been for you, and we're going to talk about that in depth. But yeah, I mean, certainly I would say there's a huge parallel between this kind of journey of self-improvement that I've been on that really started with financial independence. That's where it all started. But I have to say, I mean, for years, I was, I think, 35 pounds heavier than I am right now, just maybe when my younger daughter was born. So, I mean, we're not talking all that long ago, maybe about 8 years ago. It was never like that aha awakening moment. It was just all these things that I had been learning about, all these different mindset upgrades, right? Like thinking about habits, thinking about certainly long-term mindset. That's what we talk about all the time when it comes to FI, is this is not a sprint. This is not a short-termism. We even use the phrase, this is not akin to a diet, which is just deprivation, right? It's short-term deprivation that is going to end. We think of FI and this journey to FI as a 50 to 70 year thing. When you reconceptualize everything from quarterly, or I'm going to go on a 30-day fast or whatever it may be, right? To this is a 50-year self-improvement journey. That changes everything. And I think that then went into my personal life and how I looked at how I was showing up in my life, how I was showing up for my kids. Did I want to be the dad who could coach soccer and swim with my kids for hours at a time? Or did I want to be the couch potato, which I was becoming? And it wasn't just one thing. It wasn't short term. It was a series of habits. But let's be frank, this was hard work over an 8+ year period. And I think, long story short here, Jonathan, this is very personal for me. And I know it's very personal for you too.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to take some notes on kind of what to cover, just to point out and highlight the themes that I see. And so we'll kind of use this idea of this metaphor of the journey to kind of illustrate both our path to financial independence and also our path to pursue a better level of fitness for ourselves, a better level of health. And I think, when you're in this community and you're looking to optimize various aspects of your life, you're saying, I'm choosing to be on this journey as well. I'm going to be more intentional, and I'm trying to become a better person. And I'm trying to build a better life for myself and for my family, those around me. I think that's the common bond that all of us have here. And what's cool is when you get some even marginal amount of success in one aspect of your life, you can take that confidence into other areas and you can start saying, all right, if I can do this, what else could I accomplish? When I think about the parallels, the first point I want to make is the people have a natural bias to confuse or conflate the results for the process. Now, maybe that immediately makes sense to many of our listeners, but Facebook, Instagram, maybe Twitter, these are for the results. These are the extreme results, right? I mean, you can say, look at this awesomeness right here. But when you just focus on the results, what you are ignoring, and we could talk about the person that just lost 30 pounds or 40 pounds, or the person that just got their first $100,000 in net worth or millionaire. When you just look at that, you don't understand that at the fitness level, this person was running around in their garage or their free space, grunting and sweating. It's not glamorous. And they were doing it day in and day out. They were making a choice not to eat out. They were making a choice to eat healthier, cleaner foods. They were sacrificing in some ways, making choices that in a past life, in an unintentional life, it would have been easier just to say yes. They were saying no to some things because they could have this better future for themselves. With the person that just saved up their first 100K, maybe the same thing. It's so hard to save that first 100K. Trust me, my friends, it does get easier from there. But that first 100K, it just feels like you're fighting an uphill battle and you're having to say no to, the paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, all the subscriptions that you could opt into, all the various things that you could be doing with that money, all the stuff that you could own. You're saying no to that. And I think it's very easy for us to say, oh, look at them. They got 100K. Wow. Okay, great. Nothing to learn there. Or look at them. They lost 40 pounds. They must have a good metabolism, whatever. And just miss entirely that the most important part of this is not the results. It's the day-to-day process that they went through to get that result.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, I think this ties directly into what we were saying before about long-term mindset and also habits. We talked with James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, about this. And we even talked about setting up habits to make going to the gym or being fit easier, right? Just little things. Almost invariably in life, it's the little things that make those huge outsized differences. So something even as simple when we're talking about a habit of, okay, I'm the type of person that you bring it back to an identity statement. I'm the type of person that goes to the gym 4 mornings a week. And now I got to be honest, when I wake up and I'm not really feeling like going, I think about that identity statement, and B, I look at the athletic clothes and the shoes that I've laid out all set to go. And it's so much easier. I've already done the work. That person the night before set up those clothes because he, in this case, knew that the morning Brad was not going to want to do this.
Morning Brad and nighttime Brad are two totally different people, and they don't talk to each other.
They do not at all. They do not like each other very much at all. But luckily, nighttime Brad, in this case, takes control. And, you just lay your clothes out. You lay your shoes out. You have your water bottle set. And it just makes it easier, right? So those tiny little habits, they make a difference. And you don't have to. Not only do you not have to, but you shouldn't set absurd goals from the beginning. Like if I said to you, Jonathan, I'm going to go out and run 5 miles tomorrow and every day thereafter, the likelihood of me succeeding at that is close to zero, almost zero. I would probably say zero, knowing myself. But if I said, you know what, I'm going to start running a 1/4 mile tomorrow, which will take about, a couple minutes at most. And then I'm going to run 2 extra houses each day thereafter. The likelihood of something like that working is dramatically, dramatically higher. I think when you set these kind of absurd things at the beginning, like this is only a success if I go to the gym 7 days a week. Well, what happens that first time that you're not feeling well or life intervenes? Do you think of yourself as a failure? I think most people sadly would, and they probably would stop. But if you set it that I'm the type of person that makes healthy decisions, then you can reframe that with kindness of if you wake up in the morning and you have a headache, you can give yourself some slack, give yourself some kindness that you're actually making the healthier choice to not go out and exacerbate this. And then tomorrow, you're going to go out and exercise. I think these little things really become the big things when it comes to habits and ultimately behavior change.
Yeah. We all have habits. You don't just get to choose good habits, right? I mean, well, that's I framed that slightly wrong, but we all have habits, and our default status, they're not all just good. And so our day is going to be made up of a pattern of habits that out of a drift state, we have just self-selected. Maybe we made an intentional choice, maybe we didn't, but that has become our new norm. And the key here, I believe, for long-term success is to replace bad habits with new ones that replace those, and so the key here is, and I think you were saying this slightly, this game, this path to both financial independence and fitness, it is not that you have enough willpower to make it to the finish line. It is that over time, you realize that you're just not tested as much. Your willpower isn't tested. So it's very easy to talk about this in light of weight loss. I can actually talk about my own personal experience. I guess for context for people, they should know that I made the decision to undergo a 6-month health challenge. The goal was to lose 10% of my body fat over a period of 6 months. And I blew by that 10% in about 70 plus days. So I've already beaten that goal. I'm going to keep going. I've decided. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But when I first started, I was eating every night popsicles and ice cream with my kids. I don't know what it was about COVID, but that just was our default go-to snack. And at least one night a week, we were having pizza. And then in breakfast or in the afternoon as a snack, I would find a Pop-Tart, brown sugar cinnamon. They are incredible. I don't know how I went my entire childhood without having them, but we would just occasionally have a Pop-Tart, and it would be that type of processed food that would make it throughout the day. That was the habits that I found. And when I made the decision to get on this health challenge and I cut those, I had cravings. My willpower was tested. And so there was a period of time for about a week or two that was tough. And I knew for that 2-week period, I needed to lean in and get those out of my system. But past 2 weeks, going into 20 days, 30 days, 40 days, I don't have sugar cravings anymore at all. My willpower isn't being tested at all. In fact, I'm getting so many other benefits. My energy levels are higher. My clothes fit. I'm getting these feedback loops that are positive, reinforcing feedback loops. I'm in such a good place that I just don't have willpower issues. So I wake up and say, do I want to keep doing this? And yeah, it's great. Why would I not want to do this at this point? And that is a completely different scenario than where I was at day 0. And now let's talk about that in the context of financial independence. The parallels are obvious. You know, when you are used to going from one paycheck to paycheck balance to the next paycheck to paycheck balance, you spend everything you make. It's going to be painful probably the first couple of weeks to start getting out of that groove. In fact, I know for many people, if they don't buy something every day, if they don't spend some money every single day, it feels like they haven't gotten their money's worth out of the day, right? I mean, one of our kind of de facto habits is just logging on to Amazon, see what else you want, have a Prime shipment every day. Joel from 5180 talked about this. It was raining Amazon packages on his front porch. It takes a while to kick that habit, but if you do it for even a relatively short period of time, you stop getting your dopamine hit, your stimulus from that purchase, and instead, you can actually start putting that money towards something productive, like, giving yourself more options down the road.
Yeah, Jonathan, I wanted to go back and ask you a couple of questions about something you said there. So when you said you're not tested as much, can you expand on that and give kind of the lesson that you would pass along to the audience from that?
I think when we're starting out with something hard, because it is hard, we just I don't want to do hard stuff. This is painful. This isn't comfortable. And it's always going to be this bad. So I don't want tomorrow to be as difficult as it was today. Now, we could all come up with an extreme example, but if there are huge percentages of the population that can go and eat clean food year round, I believed about myself that I could, I don't think you're born right out of the crib wanting pizza. That's not something that is just built into your DNA. That is a taste. That is something that delights you that is acquired over time. And that's fine in a vacuum if it doesn't cause any other problems. But if you notice that because of the accumulation of these habits that you don't like where your fitness is headed, then you need to realize that was a habit that was acquired over time. And you can unwind that. And while it probably will be a little bit painful for the first couple days, maybe in a couple weeks, as you start to remove these grooves from your kind of mental pathways, very quickly your brain adapts, incredibly quickly. And what you got stimulus from before no longer tempts you. And so I can walk by frozen pizza or Pop-Tarts or ice cream or whatever your snack of choice was, and without even contemplating eating it at this point, because I've built this new groove, this new habit, this new routine that does not include those. And so this isn't about moderation in this case. Well, you can have one piece of pizza, but not two. No, I don't, it's not about the actual caloric count at that point. It's about the fact that I know I have discipline. I don't have self-control. If you're an individual that says, I have discipline, but I don't have self-control, then just really leaning into something like this challenge, whether it's spending, whether it's eating healthier, for even as short a period as 2 weeks or a no spend month or whatever, a no processed food month, a whole 30 month, whatever you want to call it, giving yourself a chance to retrain what lights you up. Even if it's hard, it's not going to be hard the second month or the third month. If you can lean into it, even in the short term, your brain is going to stop tempting you with that stuff. So this is a psychological game.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. And, when we did speak with James Clear a number of months ago, he talked about understanding that there is some value in setting goals, but that wasn't his preference. It was more letting these habits take control and thinking about it over the long term. So I'm curious how you kind of thought through that and the intersection of this very specific goal of losing 10% body fat, and really how you thought through that, and maybe why you picked that number.
Great question. So there was a lot there. You mentioned goals versus process, or systems as a synonym for process. What you didn't say, but I think is probably where I'll start with, is talking about triggers. When I came up with what I was really going to lean into and what changes I was going to make, what I really did is I spent some time thinking about what is my triggers for the habits that I identify as problems in my life. So we could think through, maybe an individual listeners could think through them. We'll talk about it in the fitness side first. For me, I graze constantly. I'm never full. That's my default status. I just eat and I eat and I eat. And I'm craving something, so I go back to the fridge. I usually choose something that's a little bit more sugary, a little bit sweeter. It never sustains me. It never fills me. And then I'm just kind of waiting till the next thing. In fact, I kind of feel like I'm penalizing myself because, oh, wow, I know I'm trying to be healthy, so I should probably wait, 3 more hours till my next meal. But I'm thinking about food the entire time. So identify, if you're like keeping a calendar, what foods make you feel like that? And there were some very clear patterns for me. When I'm always thinking about foods, it's sweet and salty, right? That's one. Brad, I'm sure you can identify. I think that's your trigger of choice. Laura's laughing at you right now.
How many bags of Doritos have I gone through in my life?
So that would be it, sweet and salty. And then it's sugary, but lightly sugary. I'm not talking about cake here. I'm talking about bars, like a granola bar, cereal, some types of fruit, yogurt, like low-fat yogurts, things that when I eat them, I don't feel full. I'm just immediately looking forward to the next meal. That's a trigger, and that's getting me in a place that I don't like to be. So if I can identify what those are, let's just get rid of them. Let's get out of that zone. What foods make you feel full longer without feeling bloated? Can you identify a few of those? At what times throughout the day are you eating and you feel miserable? So I tend to notice that my appetite between 6 and 10 p.m., it was a minefield. It was a dangerous place for me. I would tend to lose the most control over how much food I was consuming and what type of food I was consuming between 6 and 10 p.m. So that means that 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., I would eat the best foods, all the best foods, the greatest foods, exactly what you'd hope. But then I'd get to dinner time and then I'd have a I deserve it moment, or we'd be chilling out on the couch. And then at that point, that's when the snacks would come on board. And that's when I would lose control. So all the great clean eating that I was doing throughout the day is just gone. So a trigger there is, all right, 6 and 10 is a trouble spot for you. So how about you create a rule that says any food that you're going to eat, you eat before 6 p.m. Between 6 and 10, you can have decaffeinated tea, unsweetened tea. Don't have sugar there because you know how you react when you have sugar in your system. And it's just a few of these that help me to create something that I'm referring to as the laws of lean. I did a YouTube video on it. There will be a link in the show notes for this episode, but I just put together what are the things that I know that it's not a secret formula. It's not a medicinal herb from South America that's no one ever heard about, and it hasn't been co-opted by the big pharma and the natural cures they don't want you to know about. It's just, what are the reliable rules that when I do this, I feel better, I am at my leanest, and if I could sustain this for long periods of time, would make me become a different person. And I built my goals and I built my process, specifically my process, around removing those triggers from my life. And then I built my goals. If I were to remove the triggers and I were to implement a process to do that, what would be a reasonable amount of weight loss? So anybody listening to this that finds yourself, you think that you probably are at an unhealthy weight, maybe your doctor has told you, a reasonable goal for yourself just to set is likely going to be around 10% body weight over a 6-month period. That is what most physicians, if they are advised, if your physician has talked to you in a one-on-one conversation and said, I think you probably need to lose some weight, usually what they came up with as a reasonable goal is 10% body weight over a 6-month period of time. That gives you a lot of latitude and leeway. It's a reasonable goal. It's a transformative goal, but it's not necessarily overly aggressive. I can tell you personally, I hit that goal in about 70 something days, and I'm going to keep going because at this point, I just feel good. Why would I not keep doing this? But if you need more time to figure out what's making you feel better, what those triggers are, what your process is, 6 months is a great amount of time. And Brad, if at the end of the 6 months, I've kept the weight off, let's say I just stopped at 10%, but 6 months later, I've just stayed here, I'm still in such a better place than I was even 60 days ago.
Yeah, no, there's no question about that. And obviously we want to give the caveat that this is not medical advice. So clearly contact your physician if you're thinking about losing weight. This is just my story and Jonathan's story. But I think, Jonathan, that self-knowledge that you talked about, I think it's something that's become very clear to me as well in just the last couple of years in terms of what I eat and how I feel thereafter. And it was something I never, it sounds so elementary, like once you actually think about it, but I never put two and two together of, oh, why am I lethargic after this meal? Or why did I take a nap this afternoon? And why did my joints hurt the next morning? It was just a steady state because that was how I felt essentially all the time. And only in the absence, in my case, of joint pain, in the absence of it, randomly one day, did I realize, oh, wow, my normal state isn't so normal. Like something has to give here and I need to figure this out. And you're describing situations where, you'll feel lethargic in the afternoon. And I actually just had two of these instances in the past couple months. So the first one, I had a smoothie for lunch and I put in like a full banana. In all honesty, like I don't eat that much in the way of carbs or eat that much sugar. And I had a banana and some other kind of sweet things in there. And I crashed and took like an hour and a half nap within 30 minutes of that. And then I thought back and wow, has that happened before? And I thought back and it actually had. And interestingly enough, we just had Father's Day a couple of weeks ago. And my wife made me my favorite French toast and bacon for lunch, actually. I know it's normally a breakfast thing, but we had it for lunch. And Jonathan, I kid you not, I crashed to the tune of almost a 2-hour nap within 30 minutes of finishing that meal.
Wow.
And it was just, right, it's crazy. And like, that's something that I would have just eaten a couple times a week 10 years ago. And now I've gotten to the point where I'm eating in such a healthy manner that one meal like that can set off a reaction. And it's both illustrative of how food can impact you, but it also makes me realize, wow, I was in such a bad scenario where I was eating this stuff all the time that it didn't impact me, years ago. So it starts with one little thing. It starts with just noticing that what you put in your body impacts how you feel. No matter how elementary that sounds when you actually think about it, you need to start looking at how is this impacting my day-to-day life? And even down to keeping a journal. Like I'm at the point when I was trying to figure out why I had joint pain, I was keeping track of what I ate the day before, and I've been able to eliminate a lot of it.
Oh, that's awesome, man. One of the things you said there, and I think it rings true with me, is that it's personal, right? It's very easy to sell a book that's called The Ultimate Diet. And it's just this one size fits all. And there's 4,000 of those books, all with somewhat different rules, variations of those rules. As a thought experiment recently, I just kind of tried to grab a list of, all the different diets that were out there. This is the one. And sometimes they really conflict with each other too. I mean, you have a paleo diet, you have a keto diet, you have a Mediterranean diet, you have a warrior diet, you have the Whole30, you have Atkins, you have I don't know. I'm running out of steam, right?
Go on.
Weight Watchers, et cetera. And like the thing is, they all work. I mean, they do all work. And so what does that mean? Does that mean that one's wrong, or is there one that you should pick of those? And I think what it comes down to is it's personal. When you're picking a diet or you're picking a program or you're trying to implement, as opposed to just getting to know yourself and following some basic rules, if you were going to just pick a program and try and follow it, what does it mean when you stop following it? Because now, does that mean that the quote unquote diet hasn't worked? You never took the opportunity to learn something about yourself. You were just trying to follow the program, and now you aren't doing what the program says. So that means you failed. You should just give up, as opposed to what are the common sense, kind of laws of leanness, right? What do they all have in common? What are these like principles that if you follow these and you kind of tailor them to your lifestyle, there are so many benefits for you being able to create your own custom, and you figure out what works for you, what doesn't, what you're going to keep, what you're going to throw out, and create a lifestyle out of it. And I want to set you up to really talk about the long-term mindset, but I think with any diet or program, there's an 80-20. They all have some good principles in there, and there's some that just don't make a difference, but we get so fixated on these tiny little pieces of it that when we can't adhere to that, we give up on the whole program. And so, Brad, I'd love for you to talk about, minimum effective dose, 80-20, and kind of the long-term mindset of finding your own custom plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is exactly where that long-term mindset comes in with the intersection of FI. It's thinking about this as what are those little 1% changes I can make that over the long term are going to lead to my success. So Laura and I started trying to cut down on portion size. That was actually our original 1% change. So it was, we are just simply eating too much. And me especially. I mean, I come from, as I like to say, a long line of eaters, and I love my food, and I just was eating too much. I wasn't feeling great. I think that is ultimately what this all comes back to, is I wasn't feeling great. I wasn't feeling great about how I was showing up in my life, and I wanted to make change because I wanted to be healthier. So the lowest hanging fruit was, let's cut down on portion size and see if I miss any of it. And I don't believe in depriving myself. So that was never like a huge aspect. It was never, let's cut my food consumption in half. It was, I mean, Jonathan, I know I've said this to you before, but like, it was as simple as Laura and I used to make an
I actually remember. I remember. Let me see if I remember. It was
Yeah.
those, hang on. It was the bread rolls, right? It was the
Yep,
garlic
yep.
bread rolls. That was the
Yeah.
inflection point in the Barrett
That
household.
was.
And you tell
Good
me I'm
memory,
not
man.
a good listener.
No, you are. Yeah, I'm shocked and impressed. No. So yeah, it was a garlic bread. That was, I mean, we used to make an entire loaf of this New York, like, delicious Italian bread. And we realized, like, that is absurd for two, like, 20 somethings to be eating a loaf of garlic bread along with dinner. And then we're like, all right, what would it look like to make half of a garlic bread and freeze the other half? Something simple. Like, I mean, you could not come up with a 1% or maybe a 1/4% change that's smaller than that. Let's just start there. The punchline of this is, we obviously didn't miss it, right? And then it's, all right, how much can you cut out without missing, without it being deprivation? Then it's, all right, let's look at, how is this impacting my health? What are those 80/20 things? What are the items that I can cut out that will have a vast outsized benefit for me? And in my life, what I determined was sugar was the number one and carbs was number two. And I'm not fanatical about cutting carbs. I'm not like a no carb zealot or anything, but I try my best. I really limit sugar, and I try to limit carbs as much as I can. But, I'll eat a sandwich, as much as the next guy. Like I said, I had French toast and all that stuff. Like, I'm not crazy about this, but I try as best I can. And I've noticed that those three things, so cutting portion size just a little bit, and then, seeing how this could work, and then carbs and sugar, those were the three things that have made a huge, huge outsized difference. And not for nothing, Jonathan, but, again, we're talking about the intersection with phi and dollars and cents. And actually, part of the gamification of the portion size came down to those dollars and cents, literally, because my ravenous appetite was costing us money. Really, like, Laura would make a meal that theoretically should have lasted us, each of us, that night, and then one night of leftovers. And if I had my seconds or thirds in most cases, that ate into what was supposed to be left over. That just destroyed an entire meal's worth of dinner for the two of us. And then Laura had to cook for that next night. I mean, she loves cooking, in fairness, but that was not something that was pleasant. I mean, that's not fair to her, just because I was overeating. So, it all tied together. It's all part and parcel of the same thing, of thinking about just trying to live a better life. And we think about that in terms of money optimization, health optimization, time optimization. And that's just one tiny little anecdote of where all three of them do intersect.
I like that. I don't think I've ever heard you frame it like that before, but I enjoy that. That's awesome. It's interesting. I've kind of noticed a little bit of the same. I would have said sugar, absolutely at the highest point. Sugar, fried foods. I've also noticed for me, and a lot of those fried foods come with breading as well. So it's like fried chicken and fries or some sort of other breaded goodness. So you can take those carbs and you can put them in a nice coating of transhydrogenated fried fats. But anyways, for me, that list kind of looked like sugar, fried food, and then carbs. But I'm also not no carb. And I think it's very important to say this. I actually have a pretty robust, healthy amount of carbohydrates in my life, but I learned that not all carbs are created equal. And the where I get my carbs from is really important. And I try to avoid at all costs very processed carbohydrates. And the ones that I'm getting are kind of from whole grains. So it could be rice, brown rice or white rice. I'm not dogmatic on that in any particular form or fashion, but sweet potatoes are another one. Oats or oatmeal is another source. Carbs come in varying qualities. Carbs are a fantastic source of energy, but when most people are consuming vast quantities of carbohydrates, those are not what they're getting their sources of carbs from. So carbs for me personally, it's been kind of, well, let's increase the quality of my carbohydrate sources. You also made this point. This is kind of interesting. We've been kind of talking about these metaphorical comparisons between fitness and financial independence. This is probably the most clear way that the two directly overlap, in that you can work out and have the best workout in the world. If you're not optimizing what you're eating in the kitchen, you can barely keep pace with it. Your physique over the long term is not determined by the quality of your workouts, but by the quality of the energy sources that you supply to your body. And you can get away with a really mediocre workout if your diet and what you're eating, what you're fueling your body with are clean, healthy sources. This is a true example of how you can do less and get more. It speaks to the 80-20. If you're going to pick between optimizing your workouts more and more and more versus optimizing the time and what you're fueling your body with in the kitchen, spend your time in the kitchen. You'll get every dollar, back there. It'll go far. Then on top of that, if we kind of look at this 80-20 and we say, okay, well, we need to cut out sugar. What's going to have a lot of sugar? Well, it's going to be probably a lot of takeout. What's the primary source of fried foods? Well, it's primarily when we eat out. We're going to start making more of our foods at home. This is the 80-20 right here. When you start making more meals inside the kitchen, you've already cut out 2 of those. And then from here, you can start making small optimizations, learning about yourself. But now we're moving to the $2 per person per meal. I know our audience is familiar with this, Brad. I know in the past we've talked about it, but we can't not mention it. If someone's listening to this episode for the first time, let's talk about this anchor of $2 per person per meal and how your healthy home cooked meals that you're making in batch, really as a byproduct of your decision, your and Laura's decision to start making more at home. Let's talk about the role that's had on your fitness, but also on your budget.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really the major aspect of this intersection. And yeah, like I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, my wife absolutely loves cooking, and it's a hobby of hers. It's something that she gets enjoyment out of, but to an extent. It's this intersection in our lives. And again, this is us, right? Like it's really important to talk about, like take a step back here and say, this is just what worked for me. This is what worked for you, Jonathan, right? Like we're obviously not MDs. We're not dietitians. We're not trying to pontificate by any means. This is just what worked in our lives. And, this intersection of dollars, of time, and health. And this really comes together with our home cooking. We don't go out to eat all that much because it's really expensive. It takes a lot of time, and it's really not that healthy. So we thought, how can we make this fun at home? And Laura is constantly looking for new recipes and things that she knows we're going to like. And she's honed that kind of concept over our 15-year marriage now. And she looks for very specific recipes that aren't going to require obscure ingredients that are absurdly expensive. She tries to roughly anchor herself mentally to $2 per person per meal for each of our dinners. Now, that is very rough. We're not dogmatic about this. So if something came in at 2.25, it's not like we throw it out, obviously. I mean, that's well within the range of something.
What about $3.15?
No, I mean, I think if it's delicious, it'll certainly be tried.
Just a second, you kept it pretty close there. I was like, well, there's got to be a larger range than that.
Well, I'm sure there is some dollar figure, but also, like, just like anything, don't be dogmatic, right? Like there are plenty of times where we'll treat ourselves and have like amazing, delicious steaks and all this stuff. Like, I mean, life is not about depriving yourself. It really that's how I look at it. But again, if we're thinking about in terms of 30 dinners a month, the vast majority of them are going to be somewhere in that $2 to $2.50 per person per meal range. And, Laura also then looks for what are meals that I can make that are going to make really solid leftovers, that we're not going to be hurting for quality or just kind of resenting this dinner. What's something that'll reheat well? What's something that I can maybe double or triple the recipe and only have to cook once? Because almost invariably, when you double or triple, it's not doubling or tripling the time required. In many cases, it's not adding any time. So, again, it's this interesting intersection, right, of thinking about dollars and convenience and time and health all wrapped into one. And, she's looking for generally healthy meals. Again, we're not going crazy about it because we know almost by definition, anything we cook at home is going to be vastly healthier than a comparable meal out at a restaurant. So just by definition, we're way ahead of the game. Doing it at home where we can control the ingredients, control what cooking oils are being used, just little things like that. But those little things, they all add up, right? So Laura has been kind of, I guess, accumulating a list of these meals that just work for us. And, obviously there are meals she tries that we're convinced, oh, this is going to be great. And it's, it's like a B or B plus meal. And we'll probably not make that again. But really anything that's, we walk away saying, wow, that was delicious. That goes into this kind of repository. And Jonathan, you and I have jokingly called it the Barrett Top 50 over the last couple of years. And it's actually kind of come into existence now, which is pretty cool.
Manifested.
Which is wild. I think we have 30 of them produced and uploaded to our website. And anybody can download a free copy of that at just chooseavi.com/meals if you're interested. But that's really how we live our lives. I mean, does that sound about right?
I mean, it does. And I should tell you, because I think, people are like, well, I need to go, if I'm on a diet, that means I can only eat certain foods. And what I like to think about is there are some things that we are cutting out. Like I'm not consuming vast unlimited quantities of sugar. In fact, I'm trying to get it as close to zero as possible. I'm trying to clean up my carbohydrate sources. I'm not doing as much or any fried foods at this particular point. But there are so many diets, quote unquote, out there that have these real restrictions. All right, well, you can't eat any, I don't know. I'm trying to pick up something that would be funny, but I can't come up with it on the fly. But we can all visualize a diet that has these weird rules, and you just kind of want to question, well, why? Really? Is that really making a difference? And I could say that, like, I've been eating the meals from the Barrett's Top 50 as part of this process, and those meals are delicious. They're healthy. They're nutritious. They have everything you need. You don't need to limit yourself to them. Eat whatever you want. But if you're looking for some inspiration, these adhere to that. You're not going to see anything in here that's loaded down with sugar. You're not going to see anything in here that's triple fried. These are meals that will meet the criteria and get you the results. They're not made with any particular diet in mind. But the good news is you can look for just whole foods that meet kind of this top line of criteria. And that's the 80-20. That's the 80-20 right there. And I just wanted to encourage our audience, like, there's momentum here. We talked about it a little bit further, but let's just put it in context for people. Let's use just myself as an example here. So when I started this, I'm 200 pounds. I'm objectively, and I can quantify that, I'm overweight. And so setting a goal for myself of 10% body weight loss over a period of 6 months would say, for me, I'm going to lose 20 pounds over the next 6 months. Now, do you have any idea, like if you put 20 pounds of fat on the table in front of you, and you can kind of visualize, I don't know if anybody's ever seen it before, but the blocks, the yellow blocks that they'll show you at a nutritionist's office or a doctor's office, do you have any idea what 10 pounds of fat actually looks like? And then double that. For me, I'm talking about myself personally, now having lost that 20 pounds and looking back, I realize no wonder I was tired all the time. No wonder I felt exhausted, lethargic. No wonder I didn't want to go do the activities. I didn't want to whatever. I just needed to end the day because I was tired. It's exhausting carrying around unnecessary extra weight that really is happening because of these unconscious, unintentional habits. And so the momentum happens is as you start to make progress and you realize this, your energy levels come back, your cravings come back. So much of what you were doing in the past, I remember this for myself, was just trying to mentally force myself to not snack in between meals because I could see the trend was going the wrong way, and that's just me being reactive. The proactive approach looks like, well, what would look like if you actually just fueled your body with clean food and really dialed in, lean into a healthy lifestyle? You actually start getting momentum for you. You're wanting to say yes to more walks, to more activities, to random opportunities to exercise. And you're ready to go another round as soon as it's all finished because you've got momentum at your side. You're not thinking about food. It just happens to be time to eat. It's things like that. That's the momentum that works for you. When you get that first 100K in your investment accounts, like you toiled to get that first 100K. It just felt like you weren't making progress. You'd put $1,000 into the account after a couple months of savings, and then the market would get a little bumpy the next week, and you'd be like, what just happened? But if you look about it with the long-term trend, suddenly the wind is behind you. Your money is actually earning money for you. The hard work that you put in to lose the weight has given you energy levels that you haven't seen in years. You're becoming the best version of yourself, the more energetic version of yourself. You're looking for opportunities to say yes. And this is just kind of the point of encouragement here. If you can handle your finances, if you can crush your finances, you can crush your fitness. If you can crush your fitness, you can crush your finance. It's the same skill set. And how cool would it be if you could have both? And the final point, Brad, that I think we should both talk about, you mentioned it in passing, but let's spend a little time here. We talk about it on the show all the time, this idea of being able to get 1% better, just 1% better. And you've given some very crystal clear examples of that. I just want, you don't have to do everything that we just mentioned. Just make one small change and then build on that. If that's working for you, if you find yourself in a better place, take another. And so, Brad, I was thinking maybe we could come up with a list. What are some small actions that someone that's just willing just to get started? They're like, you know what? I trust you guys. I've seen what's happened with my finances over the last couple of years. I've always known the next thing I was going to tackle was my fitness. But for whatever reason, I just haven't had the courage or the energy just to get started with that. But as a result of this episode, this is my day one. I'm starting. What is the smallest action that I can take? Let's come up with a small list so people can build on it.
Cool. I've got one that jumps out to me. One of the first ones that I took, aside from what I've already mentioned, was cutting out putting sugar and loading down with cream in my coffee. So I now just drink black coffee, and I've come to really appreciate the flavor. And I was masking that with unhealthy ingredients for no reason. So that is a super simple one that you can start tomorrow. Just don't put sugar in your coffee or tea. Just give it a whirl.
Yeah, I like that. And you could even add on to that, like your coffee might be crap. Like it actually might be crap. If you're drinking tar oil every morning and calling that coffee, that's not what coffee is supposed to take like. We've actually introduced the entire cream industry to our coffee to solve for the fact that we are just drinking garbage. There are better coffees out there. Maybe, Brad, that's like another rabbit hole, right? Where you could find a coffee you actually enjoy. Drinking black. Liquid calories, that's something that you were talking about, though. And for me, that's another big one for me. The earliest step, and I think it's kind of a drifting point for so many people, is just soda. We don't drink water. Like if you don't drink water, all you drink is some sort of sugary beverage as an alternative, whether or not be orange juice or alcohol or grape juice or soda, Coke, Pepsi, whatever. If you just I don't do water. Let's start there. That is massive. And the start would not be, let's go from soda water to diet soda. Let's just go straight to diet soda. And I think I can handle that. No, my friend. Like for your one step, let's cut out the soda. If you want to have like a seltzer water, because you need a little bit of taste, or you want to just go straight to water, make that a single action. So pick one of those, black coffee or soda. Brad, what could we stack on top of that? What could be another thing? And again, this is an a la carte menu, right? You don't need to just start with one of them and build on top of it.
Yeah, I liked something you mentioned before, which was stopping eating at a certain time. I think you said 6 p.m. I generally try to be done with dinner by 6:30.
Nice.
And I've actually found that it helps my sleep because my body's not trying to digest food. It's, I'm just ready for sleep. So I think it's kind of a force multiplier is stopping eating at a certain time, ideally by 7 p.m. if you can.
That's fascinating that you're doing that as well. I've actually noticed, it's a force multiplier on both sides. So not only do you sleep better, but you wake up with more energy. You would think you'd wake up starving, but I notice like I'm actually less hungry when I wake up in the morning than when I went to bed, and I wake up very alert compared to that version of myself that's still digesting the ice cream and pizza from the night before.
That's very, very cool.
Another one, maybe we could do like let's say someone does a spin challenge, like a no spin challenge, maybe for 1 month and COVID. Wow, what a great time to try this. Maybe you just don't eat out for 1 month, or for 1 week, depending on how big of a problem this is for you. Like maybe you just replace a couple of those eating out adventures with a home cooked meal, something that you genuinely get excited about, but maybe you just try to substitute it out. Brad, another one that I take as a kind of a 1%er is identifying just a couple of those trigger foods for you, because it's different for everybody. For me, one of the ones that was super sneaky is cereal or granola. Granola you think of as being healthy. When I say granola, you think of heart health. The marketing companies have done a very good job. Look, we are taking oatmeal, which is technically very good for you, high in fiber, and we're wrapping that in maple syrup and cinnamon and raisins and maybe additional brown sugar. Lots of it. I know because I've made it from scratch. And it tastes amazing, but it's so Moorish. What are those Moorish type things that you kind of think of as healthy? You're giving yourself credit for a healthy meal, but once you have it, you're craving food for the entire rest of the day. Remember that episode in Seinfeld with the, was it the ice cream? It was the fat-free ice cream or whatever. And they're giving themselves credit for this healthy option. And in posts are like, oh yeah, that was actually really bad for you. It's like that. What is it that we're taking for granted? We think, oh, this is healthy, so I can have as much of it as I want. But the way you feel afterwards very much reminds you of what you would feel if you were eating something that was very bad for you, right? It's something very sugary or processed. Maybe it's because your assumptions about that product are incorrect. What if you cut it?
Yeah, that makes sense. Or even, obviously that's from the perspective of something that's ostensibly healthy. But even for me, it's something that I know is not great that I try to cut out, is like my mid-afternoon snacking on tortilla chips, even if it's just a couple. Like this is my Achilles heel, is the bag of tortilla chips that lives in our cabinet, unfortunately. But just cutting that out. And I find also that, again, you talk about it like a force multiplier, almost invariably when I have them, then I get hungrier. It's not like it satisfies anything. It's that salty taste. It just makes me want more of anything, essentially. So these are definitely examples of just these little things. And you invariably are going to have something in your own life that you can think about. It could be like we were talking about before with the portion size. And obviously, I can't tell you what to cut out portion size in your life. You know it when you see it, right? You know what that item is for you. For us, again, it was that crazy garlic bread. That was the obvious low-hanging fruit. And just find something that you can surprise yourself with. I think that at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make healthier choices without making our life worse. And quite the contrary, making our life better. So, I mean, I think that to me, Jonathan, is the key to all these little changes.
Yeah, I like what you said there in particular. Like, I can't tell you the specific portion size, but I think it's almost binary. Like, do you actually have a amount that you've portioned out, or are you just eating out of the bag? If you're just eating out of the full family size bag, it's not going to end well. You don't just stop until the bag's empty. I know how that story ends. I've been down that road before. So are you setting some amount aside? Are you doing any portion whatsoever, regardless if it's the right amount right out the gate? And then we talked a lot. A lot of the things we said are little strategies for optimizing what we're eating. We could do a whole episode on fitness. And I don't think fitness needs to be super complicated. I mean, this is truly the 80-20 is what you're doing in the kitchen. I will just say with fitness, like, you do need to move your body. If you're a software engineer, if you just sit in front of a computer all day long, and then when you get done, you're super stressed out and you're relaxing in front of the TV and Netflix coaxes you to bed, from 6 to 10, what in that day has been an actual exertion for you? What window have you had? And you do need to do something. I'm not saying you need to do ultra marathons or anything extreme, but do you take a walk with your family? Do you move your body to some degree at any point throughout the day? Do you work up a sweat? It's the middle of summer and you're not sweating. What's going on? It's something along those lines. And so if you're like, well, I just don't want to do anything hard. How about this, Brad? No one wants to work out. Like it takes a long time to get to the point where you really want to work out. So instead of you making the goal that you're going to have the most epic, intense workout, how about the goal is, I'm going to do something for 2 minutes. If the goal is I'm going to do 20 push-ups a day and that terrifies you, say, all right, I'm going to do 1 push-up a day. Just start there. That's the goal. Make it super simple. You're like, I'm going to do an hour on the bike. That's super scary. You're not going to stick with that. Say, all right, every day or 5 days a week, I'm going to put on my clothes. I'm going to go out to the space, and I'm going to do the bicycle for 2 minutes. And I give myself permission. In fact, I'm going to force myself just to walk away after 2 minutes. No, you don't have to actually force yourself, but you do have to get on that bike for 2 minutes. What you do past that point is totally up to you. That's the sort of way you're giving yourself more chances to start to become this person, to fulfill this identity statement that you're starting to create. And we all are going to have our innate characteristics. We're going to have our tendencies. That's what makes us unique as a person, but it doesn't mean that you're stagnant. Humans adapt. And if you create guardrails around the type of person you want to become, whether that be better with your finances, better with your fitness, know the rules, know the triggers, it makes it easier for you to cultivate these new routines in your life. There's a lot of information here, and I think some of it will be valuable for you in post. We're putting together a resource for you. You can find it at our website, choosefi.com/health challenge, one word, choosefi.com/health challenge, or you can access all the show notes at choosefi.com/236, choosefi.com/236. I hope this has been encouraging for you. Take these 1% actions that will allow you to realize how exciting the future is for you. Most of us, we're starting to approach halfway done with our time on this earth. And that's incredible. We had the first half just to screw it all up and do what we could do. But now we have this information and we have a second chance to do it better. Let's do it better. You have the second half of your life. What are you going to do with it? All right, my friends, the fire is spreading. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to Choose FI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.